You're born in Germany sometime between the late 1800s and early 1900s. You didn't exactly dream of joining the Gestapo as a kid. Nobody grows up thinking, but guess what? Here you are. Maybe you started as a regular policeman. Maybe you were a soldier who got promoted for loyalty. Or maybe you were just a random dude who had nothing going on, and some Nazi official said, "Hey, want to join the secret police?" And you thought, sure, sounds cool. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Congratulations. You now have the most feared job in Nazi Germany. But before you can start terrorizing people, you need training. Your first lesson, how to extract confessions from people, whether they're guilty or not. That means learning how to break someone mentally before you even have to break them physically. You're trained to intimidate, manipulate, and play mind games. Your second lesson, how to blend in. See, the Gestapo wasn't about walking around in uniform like the regular police. Nope, you were undercover, operating in civilian clothes, pretending to be normal while secretly watching everyone. You had to master the art of acting like a friendly neighbor. Oh, and let's not forget the final lesson, how to never have friends again. Gestapo officers didn't trust each other. Everyone was either a potential traitor or a future enemy. Conversations were vague, friendships were superficial, and loyalty, that was a joke. All right, training's over. Now you're officially a Gestapo officer. You've got your ugly trench coat, your notebook full of names, and an overwhelming sense of paranoia. Welcome to the worst job ever. Your daily routine, wake up, interrogate someone, ruin a few lives, then go home and wonder if someone's about to do the same to you. The main thing you do all day? Spying. The Gestapo's whole deal was tracking down enemies of the Reich, which basically meant anyone who thought Hitler was an idiot, told a bad joke about the government, or just looked suspicious in general. And how did you find these dangerous criminals? By trusting snitches. That's right, half your job was reading anonymous tips from bitter neighbors, jealous coworkers, and people who just really hated their landlord. And sure, sometimes the reports were legit, but a lot of times you were arresting some guy just because his ex-wife wanted revenge. Of course, interrogation was another big part of the job. You weren't looking for the truth. You were looking for any excuse to arrest someone. And if someone said the wrong thing, congratulations. They're now an enemy of the state. Their entire family, also enemies of the state. Their dog? Okay, maybe not the dog, but still this job wasn't just dangerous for your victims. It was dangerous for you too. If you accused the wrong person, you could be accused of incompetence. If you let someone go, that meant you were too soft. If you ever said something even slightly anti-Nazi, good luck explaining that one. And just when you thought you had some control, here comes the SS, reminding you that the Gestapo was just a tool of the Nazi war machine. You weren't some untouchable spy master. You were just a replaceable cog in Hitler's paranoid nightmare. So yeah, your job wasn't just exhausting, it was a ticking time bomb. And the only way to survive? Keep spying, keep interrogating, and pray no one turns you in next. By now, you've made it to the peak of your career as a Gestapo officer. That's right, you're now considered a trusted agent of Nazi Germany. But don't get too comfortable, because this is also the part where your job gets 1,000 times worse. Your missions? Yeah, they're pretty horrifying. At this stage, you're no longer just arresting some shopkeeper, cracking down on resistance movements, hunting down spies and defectors, interrogating prisoners for military intelligence. One of your main jobs? Tracking down people trying to escape Germany. The Gestapo had lists of undesirables: Jews, political dissidents, resistance fighters, and anyone the Nazi party didn't like. If you caught them, they were sent straight to concentration camps. And if you didn't, that meant you were the one who failed. And failure in the Gestapo was a very bad idea. Another fun part of your job? Going undercover. Just like how ninjas disguise themselves as monks or merchants, you had to blend into enemy ranks. Except instead of sneaking into castles, you were infiltrating secret resistance groups. You were pretending to be one of them, earning their trust, and then arresting everyone the moment they slipped up. And let's not forget about interrogation missions. You weren't asking nicely. You were expected to break people. Whether it was through psychological manipulation, torture, or threats against their family, your job was to get answers. And if you didn't, well, you'd better hope someone else did, or suddenly you're looking suspicious. The worst part, you were always one step away from death. The more important your missions became, the more dangerous your life got. Resistance fighters targeted Gestapo officers for assassinations. The SS was always watching for potential traitors. You made it to the top. You were a high-ranking officer. But guess what? It's all about to come crashing down. Step 1. The war turns against you. By the early 1940s, things started going a little wrong. The Allies were advancing. The resistance movements were growing. People were starting to realize maybe this whole Nazi thing wasn't such a great idea. And suddenly, the Gestapo wasn't as untouchable as it used to be. Before, you were the one terrifying people. Now, you were the one being hunted. Partisan groups, Allied spies, and resistance fighters were actively targeting Gestapo officers. They were chasing you. Step 2. The purges begin. As the war started falling apart, the Gestapo did what it did best, turning on its own people. Officers were getting purged for failing killing the Reich. Even if you were 100% loyal, one false accusation was all it took to get yourself executed. The SS had no problem sacrificing Gestapo agents to make it look like they were fixing internal corruption. Step 3. The total collapse. By 1944-45, it was every man for himself. The Soviets were closing in from the east. The Allies were storming through the west, and the Nazis, they were scrambling like cockroaches. Some Gestapo officers burned documents and tried to cover their tracks. Some changed identities, pretending they were never involved, and others ran. A lot of them fled to South America, hoping to disappear, because they knew exactly what was waiting for them if they got caught. Step 4. Trial or execution. Pick your poison. For those who didn't escape, there were two options. War crimes trials, where you'd get paraded in front of the world and sentenced to death. Instant execution, because honestly, no one had time for trials at that point. The world wasn't exactly sympathetic to Gestapo officers after the war. You were either hanged at Nuremberg, executed in the streets, or thrown into prison for life. And even if you did manage to hide, you'd spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, waiting for someone to recognize you, waiting for the past to catch up, because eventually, it always did. So, congratulations, you played yourself. In the end, you weren't the hunter anymore. You were the prey. You weren't feared. You were despised. You weren't powerful. You were powerless. So you survived. Somehow, you dodged execution, escaped capture, or fled before the war ended. Maybe you even burned your Gestapo uniform and slipped back into civilian life, hoping nobody would recognize you. But here's the problem. Your past never really disappears. Option 1, you got caught. Let's be honest, most Gestapo officers didn't get a peaceful retirement. If you were caught right after the war, you got executed. If you were caught years later, you were dragged into a war crimes trial. If you managed to live a quiet life for decades, surprise, a journalist or historian found you, and now your old face is all over the news. Because people never forgot what the Gestapo did. The world spent decades tracking down ex-Gestapo officers, hunting them down, even when they were old men rotting away in some forgotten village. Option 2, you fled to South America. A lot of Gestapo officers ran to Argentina, Brazil, or Chile, thinking they could start over. New identity, new life, maybe even a little cafe where nobody knew your name. But paranoia never left you. Every knock on the door could be an investigator. Every new person in town could be hunting you. Every letter from Germany could mean someone sold you out. You were never free, and eventually people did find you. Mossad agents? Yeah, they tracked down Nazis well into the 1960s. Nazi hunters made it their life's mission to bring guys like you to justice. Even if you died before they found you, your name got exposed eventually. Option 3, you were forgotten. Let's say you somehow avoided everything. You weren't executed, you weren't hunted down, and you lived a long, miserable life in hiding. The people you worked for either turned on you or abandoned you. The country you terrorized rebuilt itself without you, and history made sure your name would only ever be remembered as a monster. So, congratulations. You lived long enough to see yourself become the villain, and now you get to die alone, forgotten, and worthless. Oh, but hey, at least you got to keep that ugly trench coat.